Annabel tried to stop him, but he then shouted, "Be still! Don't you know I'm in love with you?" Annabel knew he wasn't okay. She tried to push him away, but unfortunately, Mr. Edward forced himself on her. He raped her. He then slept off while Annabel cried all through. Not knowing what to do, she kept crying. Lady Mitchell heard Annabel mourn in the room. She felt she had made Mr. Edward do the worst. She was very happy that she recorded the sound from the window as they mourned. Her plan was to use the record to blackmail him. When the party was over, Annabel left for home. She kept crying all night. The next morning was her last day in Mr. Edward's house, as he had fully recovered. When she came in, Mr. Edward saw her and said, "Annabel, good morning. Why did you leave without telling me? I forgot to take my night medications. Do you know that?" Annabel realized he didn't remember what happened the last night. She replied, "My mom asked me to come home. I'm sorry." Annabel went to make his breakfast. She tidied everywhere and went to pack her clothes so she could leave. When she got to his room, she told him she was leaving. He then said, "All right, I'm very grateful for the service you rendered to me." Annabel replied, "It's fine. I was only doing my job." As soon as Mr. Edward came close to give her a hug, she pulled back and said, "This is not necessary." Mr. Edward realized something was wrong. "Are you okay, Annabel?" She replied, "I am fine." He went to his cupboard, brought out a check of $2 million, gave it to Annabel. Annabel collected it, looked at it, and dropped it on the table in front of him. She ran out of the room, crying. Mr. Edward followed her. He called out her name. "Annabel, stop! Annabel, where are you going to? What is wrong? Annabel, please stop." Annabel left the mansion without stopping or looking back. Mr. Edward thought she was just being emotional, since she wasn't going to work there anymore. He knew he had feelings for her, but he didn't want to express it because he was scared of the repercussions. Mr. Edward tried all his best to reach out to her, but to no avail, as Annabel had stopped working in that hospital and nobody knew where she was. Her number wasn't reachable. 3 months later, Annabel discovered she was pregnant. She was scared to tell her parents because they would be disappointed. Yet, she wanted to have the baby. Few days later, her mom noticed some changes in her body. She knew she was pregnant. She told Annabel's dad, and they both decided to confront her. When Annabel was confronted, she said she didn't know who the father was. This pissed them off, as they decided that if she did not disclose who the father was, they would disown her after 5 days. On the third day, Annabel went to the market with her mom. Since her mom was a trader, she was helping her mom sell things. Suddenly, she saw a convoy of cars heading towards their shop. It was Mr. Edward. He had traced her location. Just before this, while Mr. Edward was on his way to Annabel, his car had a flat tire that he did not want to leave it or keep going with other cars, since this was his best car, a Bentley. He saw a mechanic nearby. It was Annabel's dad. He went to him and asked that he fixed it. Annabel's dad repaired it and told him not to pay for his service, since it was a minor repair. But to his greatest surprise, Mr. Edward gave him a bag full of money worth $6,000, since money wasn't a problem to him. Annabel's dad was so happy. He wondered if there were still generous people like that in the country. When they arrived at the market, Annabel realized it was Mr. Edward. She thought of running away. Meanwhile, Mr. Edward had already seen her. He immediately came out of his car, ran to her, and said, "Why are you doing this, Annabel?" Everyone in the market was shocked, including her mom. Everyone wondered how she got to know such a rich man. Mr. Edward felt it was time to express his feelings. He then said, "Annabel, I love you." Annabel's mom watched the scene and immediately intervened. She said, "You love who? You ritualist. Don't you know this girl is carrying a bastard? She's a shameless girl without manners." Mr. Edward was shocked. He said, "Annabel, is this true?" Annabel replied, "Yes, it is. I am carrying a bastard. I am pregnant. Now, can you leave me alone?" Mr. Edward couldn't believe his ears, but he loved her so much. He immediately replied, "I will father the child. Yes, I will. He can be mine, Annie. I just want you by my side." Annabel was amazed. She replied, "Are you serious?" Mr. Edward replied, "Yes, I will. Anything both of you want, I would give you." Her mom was still in shock. Annabel cried on his shoulders while she hugged him. Then she said, "You can't father him, Mr. Edward. You just can't." Mr. Edward then said, "But why? It's my decision. I have no issue with that." Annabel replied, "Yes, you can't offer to father him. You can't offer to father this child because it's yours." This came as a shock to him. He pulled her away, saying, "What did you just say?" She replied, "It is yours. Remember the day you had your Thanksgiving party, when you told me you were feeling dizzy, when I took you to your room. Remember? You raped me there. I was scared to tell you because I was ashamed of myself." Mr. Edward quietly left into his car. He was crying. He couldn't believe that he could become a father since his ex-wife tagged him impotent. Annabel stood outside his car, telling him to stop crying. She said she loved him too, but she feared that her dream of being with him would never come to pass. After 30 minutes of Mr. Edward being sober, he came out of his car and asked Annabel if what she said was true. Again, she said, "Yes, the child belongs to you." Mr. Edward then hugged her. He immediately brought out a ring, a diamond ring, 35 carats, worth $57.5 million, and asked Annabel to marry him. It was a public engagement. Everyone in the market shouted, "Say yes! Say yes! Say yes! Accept! Accept! Annabel, accept!" Meanwhile, Annabel's dad was running to the market to come and show his wife and friends the money he got from a stranger. It was a huge sum of money, so he was excited. As he approached the scene, he saw the same man engaging his daughter. It was like a dream. He drew closer and said, "Mr. Edward, you know my daughter?" Mr. Edward replied, "Yes, and I love her." Annabel's dad was very happy. It was like a dream come true. He gave them his blessings. They got married after a while. And after some months, Annabel had a set of twins, a boy and a girl, and they lived happily ever after. Meanwhile, before the engagement took place, Lady Mitchell was on her way to blackmail Mr. Edward with the record she had. So she followed his convoy to their destination, which was obviously the market Annabel was. On seeing all the events that took place there, she was disappointed in herself. She was very angry. She felt like a loser, and immediately she left the scene. No one even noticed her presence. This was how